There's a detail tucked into the equipment lists of World War II soldiers that rarely gets discussed, even among dedicated military history buffs. Everyone talks about the canteens, the jerry cans, the water trucks, and the massive logistical work behind keeping armies hydrated. But the real story, one that rarely makes it into documentaries, is that some Allied units carried a collapsible water bladder that outperformed rigid bottles in the field. It was lighter, quieter, tougher under stress, and far more adaptable for long marches or remote operations. And what makes it even more fascinating is that modern survivalists and bushcrafters are rediscovering the same design today because it simply works better in the wild than hard containers. In wartime, water isn't just hydration, it's strategy. Troops who couldn't carry enough suffered fatigue, heat exhaustion, slower movement, and lower combat performance. Canteens were good for individuals, but they were rigid, bulky, and noisy. When a canteen banged on a belt in the dark, it wasn't just annoying, it could give away a soldier's position. So military engineers and supply officers looked backward and sideways to the collapsible skin bladders that ancient armies used for centuries, and adapted them into a standardized, rugged World War II tool. What emerged was one of the most effective, overlooked hydration systems ever designed, and it deserves a place in the modern bushcraft world just as much as it did on the battlefields of North Africa or the jungles of the Pacific. A rigid canteen holds water, yes, but it also holds empty space. The moment it's half full, you're carrying weight and volume that isn't working for you. World War II water bladders changed that because they collapsed as they emptied. Soldiers could fold them, tuck them into webbing, or stuff them into small pockets once drained. This mattered most in environments where troops moved constantly and space was at a premium. Patrols operating behind enemy lines, reconnaissance teams and air crews who bailed out all needed a way to carry more water than a single canteen could offer. The bladder solved all of that with simple material science rubberized canvas that stayed pliable in heat and did not crack in cold. The other reason they excelled was noise discipline. Any veteran will tell you that, well, silence is survival. Metal canteens clink and rattle, especially when they're strapped to loose gear. A collapsible bladder pressed flat against the body made no sound at all. Paired with a cloth wrap or pack lining, it became almost invisible from the outside. Units like the SAS, the Long Range Desert Group, and certain Pacific Scouts used versions of these bladders because they allowed troops to carry extra water without revealing their presence. This wasn't a fragile pouch. The wartime version was made from multi-layered treated canvas or heavy natural rubber sandwiched between reinforcing cloth. The seams were either vulcanized or stitched, then sealed, creating a waterproof joint that could take a fair bit of abuse. The opening was wide enough for filling from streams, trucks, or, well, even condensation troughs, and a roll-down or cork-sealed top kept the water inside during long movements. Because it flexed instead of cracking, the bladder survived repeated freezing and thawing honestly, one of the biggest killers of hard containers. It also handled pressure changes better than metal. Air-dropped units sometimes hit the ground with enormous force, yet their water bladders survived impact that would dent or burst a canteen. This durability wasn't accidental. It was the same logic that ancient nomadic cultures used for carrying water across deserts, just, adapted for modern warfare. Anyone today who spends time outdoors, especially in dry terrain, can benefit from this knowledge. While original World War II bladders are now museum pieces, the underlying principles can be recreated with modern materials or improvised in the field. One method uses a piece of heavy wax canvas or treated cotton. The fabric is folded into a pouch, stitched along the sides, and then sealed with pine pitch glue or melted wax. Once cooled, the result is a flexible water carrier that compresses as you drink. If you have access to rubberized fabric or old inner tube material, you can produce an even more durable version by cementing or vulcanizing the seams. For field improvisation without stitching, survival instructors sometimes demonstrate using a natural rubber sheet folded and secured with cordage. It won't last as long, but it applies the same World War II logic: flexibility, silence, and collapsibility. In desert or hot climate travel, this makes a noticeable difference. A rigid bottle becomes dead weight when empty. A bladder simply folds away, freeing up space for tools, food, or collected materials along the way. Many outdoor enthusiasts rely on plastic bottles or rigid flasks, but they share the same flaws as World War II canteens. They take up space even when empty, they crack in cold temperatures, and they can rattle in a pack. Modern hydration bladders, while convenient, are prone to punctures and leaks. The World War II-style bladder is simpler, easier to repair, and more adaptable. Its biggest advantage is how well it works with gravity. When hung from a branch or inside a shelter, it flattens naturally and forms a makeshift gravity-fed water source. Soldiers use this for cooking and washing. A modern bushcrafter can do the same. The bladder also makes water collection easier in emergencies. It can be placed under a drip line, fitted beneath condensation tarps, or pressed into damp sand to gather filtered groundwater. These methods work poorly with rigid bottles, but excel with soft-sided carriers, which expand outward without tipping over. The truth is simple. The World War II water bladder wasn't just practical. It was ahead of its time. It bridged ancient methods and modern gear, providing a solution that soldiers trusted in the harshest conditions. And for anyone exploring off-grid living, long treks, or survival skills, it's a reminder that sometimes the best inventions aren't the newest ones. They're the ones that quietly proved themselves in the field and were forgotten only because technology moved on, not because they stopped working. If you want more deep dives into forgotten tools and fieldcraft that still matter today, make sure you subscribe to Backyard Wisdom and share this video with someone who respects real, field-tested history. The past has a lot more to teach, and we've only scratched the surface.